This Carson City Morgan dollar just came back from PCGS, graded Mint State 63. Now, let me show you exactly why it landed there. Mint State 63 is where strong luster can coexist with very noticeable bag marks. It's not a weak grade, but it's also not very forgiving when the surface marks stack up. So as we look at the obverse, you'll note that we do have several bag marks. We've got abrasions throughout the fields, on her face, on the devices. Not a pristine coin. These bag marks, especially a couple of these on the reverse, are what are going to be a limiter. The luster on the coin is beautiful. Look at that. But especially under close-up magnification, you're going to see that those abrasions are a little bit more numerous and a little bit more significant than they might originally appear from this angle. The limiting factor here is not the strike or even the eye appeal. It's the density and placement of the bag marks in the fields as well as in the devices on her face. So as you see, there are some abrasions on the neck, on her cheek, on her jaw, in front of her nose, in front of her eye, above the head, and behind the head. A little bit of a scuff across the cheek and down in front of the neck. The reverse, significantly, you've got some scuff marks on the left side there that are pretty significant. So again, that does not mean the coin is not mint state. Clearly, it is. The detail, there is no wear. You've got beautiful detail over the hair, beautiful detail in the hair over the ear. You've got wonderful luster. The only limiting factor are the number and severity of the bag marks, as well as where they are placed. When they begin to take away from the eye appeal, that's when you're going to see a coin limited to something like a Mint State 63. So in order to reach Mint State 64, a coin like this has to have not just fewer marks, but they need to be a little bit lighter. They need to be less visible when you look at the coin. If they are in the cracks and crevices or are very light and superficial, that is not going to prevent you from receiving a Mint State 64 grade. Where they get much more concerned and much more critical, again, is on things like this. When you see a bag mark that is that significant, that severe, and that long, that is going to limit you to a Mint State 63. A couple of things over here you're going to see not so bad. If this wasn't here, this could have been a Mint State 64. You've also got a little bit going on up here, but nothing too terrible. Now, again, on the obverse, you've got a bunch of stuff going on. You've got all these dings and hits through here. This is a little bit bigger than I would like. So is this. These were all pointed out in the evaluation video and when these coins were pulled from their rolls on camera. So, again, we talked about how significant some of these impact marks were, what some of these lines might be. We considered that they might even go details with this coin and call it scratched because of some of these things. Some of these marks here had me a little bit concerned. This one on the reverse definitely had me concerned that it could have been a details, scratched, damaged, something along those lines. But fortunately, they didn't go that far. They were, I would say, judicious and reasonable in their grade. I am not really upset with that grade designation given the number of marks that are present on the coin. So again, what that might well do is put the debate to rest for some of you anyway, that, seeing bag marks like this means you're never going to get a decent grade on a coin. You think it's going to be an AU or a mint state 60. Well, that's not always the case. So, this is one of those returns where I believe that the grade confirms the evaluation. No surprise. And that's the goal. So, what's our takeaway? Bag marks do not mean that a coin is bad. It does not mean that the coin is not mint state. What it does mean is that bag marks will define the ceiling that the coin can reach. Now, once you understand that, grading stops feeling mysterious and gets a little bit more predictable. Next, we'll look at how NGC handled a similar Carson City coin, and we'll compare how different services weigh surface preservation.